Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. I'm Dan Stilgo, marketing manager at Blend, and bringing you a solo episode today. That's right, I'm riding solo to cover something that we've been working on here at Blend and putting into practice, really, which is a framework and structured approach to improving inbound demand generation. So essentially, when we look at marketing strategy, demand generation strategy, what exactly do we look for in terms of opportunities to actually make improvements in a kind of full funnel approach? So, in this episode of Demand Decoded, I'm going to dive a little bit into that and give an overview of that approach that hopefully will help you when you're kind of looking to improve your demand generation and B2B marketing, and also identify some common areas improvement that we've seen and that I've seen that hopefully might give you a bit of guidance on where to look for this. So, firstly, let's actually outline the approach. So, obviously, within demand generation, you've got the demand gen funnel, which is made out of demand creation, demand capture, and demand conversion. Each of those things represents kind of stages that a buyer will go through when they're doing research, evaluation, and ultimately buying. So, demand creation, as we know, is the unknown kind of phase where a buyer might not know that they have a problem. They might not know that a solution is available, but it's really creating the demand for a particular problem or solution. Then you've got the capture phase, which is all about the buyer has identified that there is a potential problem that they might be facing, and they may have identified that there's a solution. Where do they go to actually indicate that they have realized that, and where can we go as marketers to capture that demand that has been created? And then you've got demand conversion, which is all about converting the demand that you've captured into pipeline and revenue. So when we look at like conversion rate optimization throughout the funnel and improving inbound demand generation, it makes so much sense to work back from revenue and influence the things that really have the most immediate impact on the bottom line. If you're improving revenue and pipeline, you can see impact within a short space of time. Whereas if you're trying to just focus on how to improve demand creation, depending on sales cycle lengths, you could be looking at 12 months plus to actually see an impact on your demand conversion at the bottom of the funnel. So lining up those pieces of the pipe and focusing on the things that will have the most immediate bottom line impact is the way to go. So, if we think about this in terms of conversion rates at each stage of the demand generation funnel, what we end up with is we've got an unknown audience to website visitor conversion. We've got a website visitor to high intent website conversion. So, website visitor to high intent offer conversion, I should say, and the conversion rate of that. So, basically, how many website visitors are you converting into demo requests, for example? Then you've got high intent conversions into pipeline. How many, demos or sales inquiries are you converting into pipeline? And then you've got pipeline to revenue, which is fairly straightforward. How much pipeline are you converting into revenue? So looking at each of those conversion rates is a good way to go about looking for these improvements. It just frames it in your mind in quite an easy to understand and easy to kind of identify way. So obviously we're working back from revenue. So the first thing to look at is pipeline to revenue conversion. How do you get more of your pipeline into closed won customers? Now, lots of this comes down to sales. Of course, they are the main driver of the conversion rate between pipeline and revenue. They will understand the buyer's use case probably better than anybody because they've had those conversations with them. They'll understand their exact needs and how your offering best suits them. So, of course, what they do here will have a huge influence on this conversion rate. But there are things that marketing can do. ABM to in-market accounts is something that I've seen pop up a few times recently, and particularly for businesses targeting large enterprises where ABM is an absolute viable strategy. And you might only have a finite number of businesses you can actually target in the first place. Marketing to those businesses in your pipeline, those accounts in your pipeline, is going to be way more beneficial to your business than trying to attract net new audience at the demand creation stage, rather than just trying to accelerate what you've got there and then. So if you do have a large pipeline, ideally of enterprise accounts or large enough accounts to do ABM, consider marketing to those before you kind of do anything else to try and have an influence on that pipeline acceleration into revenue. Next is kind of back to basics for B2B marketing, and that's case studies and results. If you're sharing new fantastic case studies with great results in that buyers probably didn't see as part of their research and evaluation process because, they're so new and they've probably stopped looking at that after they've reached out to you, then absolutely send these to your in pipeline accounts, because this is only going to make them want to work with you even more. It's going to make them want your software or whatever you might do even more. If they're getting, potentially a little bit of FOMO from this fear of missing out on these great results that you're getting for other businesses, is only going to make them want you even more, and they will do the best they can to accelerate the process. So you have them working just as hard as you are to close their account, essentially. Next, again, kind of back to basics, but those sales enablement resources, make sure that, you're having great conversations with sales and a deep relationship with them to understand the resources, the documentation, everything that they need in order to sell best, whether that be decks, products, data sheets, application notes, all of these things. Sales will, likely have great insights on what kind of content is best to share with buyers at each stage. So yeah, keep the relationship sweet there and create any content and any resources where there are gaps that might, improve this pipeline to revenue conversion rate. And it goes without saying, I think, but all of the other marketing that you do will obviously have a compounding effect here. If during the demand creation and demand capture stages of the funnel that you've built up lots of trust, lots of affinity with buyers, they understand fully what you do and how you can help them, and are just bought in essentially to everything that you do, then the pipeline to revenue phase will be much easier. It's a harder sell, right? If they're already bought in. So, yeah, it's worth bearing in mind that everything that you do further up the funnel will have a compounding impact here. And of course, I want to touch on measurement at each stage here. This measurement is fairly easy if you're trying to make improvements here and implement some of these things or some of your own things that you identify. Measuring the pipeline to revenue conversion rate and the pipeline to closed won within your pipeline is a fairly easy thing to measure. So you want to be looking at the increase or decrease, whatever change there may be there after you make these recommended changes or your own changes. So moving a little bit back down the demand gen funnel here, we've got the next conversion rate, which is high intent lead to pipeline conversion. Essentially, how do you convert more of the high intent website conversions you're already getting into your pipeline? And it might seem like marketing can't have a huge impact on this, but it's all about creating an experience for the buyer that accelerates pipeline. And it's about removing a lot of the friction from the process, perhaps adding in a little bit of positive friction. I know those two words kind of aren't usually heard together, but structured friction isn't a bad thing in this process. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do to improve the high intent lead to pipeline conversion rate. Now, there's one main thing that I want to focus on here, and that's accelerating the website to sales handoff process. Essentially, the high intent form submission to meeting booked conversion rate. And I just want to focus on this for a bit, just because this is such a huge opportunity and gap for businesses right now that are essentially in a sales motion. Obviously, for product-led growth companies, this isn't, a viable option really, because it just doesn't work like that. But if you have a sales process and the whole point of your website forms is to capture somebody, direct them to sales, then you really want to hear this. So when somebody inquires on your website, whether that be through a book a sales or book a consultation or book a demo type form or conversion. Essentially, they want this mutual benefit, um, between both parties, which is to talk to sales about your offer. And the best thing you can do here to accelerate this high intent conversion to pipeline conversion rate is essentially to remove so much of this friction and make it as easy for buyers as possible to talk to your sales team. So, the main thing I want to talk about here is using meeting schedulers to accelerate that pipeline velocity. So what I mean by meeting schedulers is essentially that calendar UI that you've probably seen on websites or use yourselves before, that essentially allow a user to book time in somebody, in this case a sales rep's calendar, right there on your website or on a web page. And the key is to do this immediately after somebody submits an inquiry on your website. Businesses that don't currently have this in place probably have one or two or three different options when it comes to the flow of inquiries through the website. Number one is that when somebody inquires, they just get a message pop up saying somebody will be in touch soon. Basically, not much more information than that. Just we will get in touch with you basically when we have the time. Second thing that might be happening is somebody submits the form, they get the pop up message afterwards, but they also get a follow up email just clarifying when somebody will be in touch. A little bit better to follow up with an email. At least they have, perhaps a contact email address there, or just a bit more direct confirmation that, yeah, somebody really will follow up with this. We have your email. Don't worry, we'll be in touch. So a little bit better. And then you've got a step further, which might be option three. Somebody submits the form and you're already using meeting schedulers, but within the emails themselves that you send out. So submit the form, pop up message, email goes out, and you might have in that, oh, thanks for inquiring, or thanks for booking a demo. You can find a time with me here in the email. Again, much, much better, reduces a bit of friction, at least anyway. Somebody can get in touch with you fairly easily through the email. But the creme de la creme, the best thing you can do here is after somebody submits that form, direct them to the calendar embed of that relevant salesperson, whether that be by territory, by industry, by product type, whatever it may be. There are tools and software out there like Chili Piper, like HubSpot Sales Enterprise that allow you to do this type of routing. Route that person to the salesperson. So immediately after submitting that form, they can schedule time with the relevant salesperson. This means there's no manual effort required from the buyer or sales to book a meeting. So no slips in admin from either side. There's far less drop off, obviously, from this because people don't get sidetracked and end up, just kind of never replying to you, or they get a reply from somebody else first, a competitor first, and just totally ignore you because they're already in conversation with those. Happens all the time. Also, buyers themselves are still in that psychological mindset of task completion. They've come to your website, they've evaluated what you offer, they've now inquired about your solution. Now, the next thing to do is just to get in touch with somebody. And if they can do that right there and then on your website, the majority will do it to complete their task. Checked off the list, I've evaluated this, I've inquired, and now I'm having this conversation. Amazing. Check that off my list. And really, it's just a great user experience for the buyer. It's a great introduction to your business. No back and forth, really. No admin headaches just to try and get a demo or a discovery call booked in. It's just seamless from all ends. Now, you may be wondering what kind of impact you could expect to see here by implementing this calendar UI. And obviously, here at Blend, we're all about data backed insights and studies and really using data to fuel our decisions here. So, we actually ran a study comparing H1 2023 to H1 2024, where we were running two different approaches ourselves. And I've got the data to share on that because it's really, really insightful to just see the increase in the high intent lead to meeting conversion rate. So in H1 2023, we were taking option 3 that I just spoke about, if you remember, where we used automated emails to follow up with buyers that inquired on our website. So they submitted the form. We sent a series of automated emails that actually had calendar links in, which was not a bad approach. It's a step up from having no calendar link. There was no manual communication required anyway. So that's the approach we were taking in H1 2023. Just to clarify, there was no calendar embed after you submitted the form on the website. It was sent via an email. Now, from that, the MQL, so for us, a high intent inquiry on the website is an MQL. Nothing wrong with using MQL in that instance. It helps reporting massively as well. That's for another episode. But the MQL to meeting conversion rate, so basically how many people are inquiring and then how many people are going on to book a discovery call, was 42%. So 42% of people that inquired on our website would go on to ultimately book a call with sales. Now, in 2024, we redirected buyers to a meeting scheduling page after inquiring using that form. On this page, we actually had the diary of salespeople so that the buyer could schedule time right there and then, as we've just spoken about, enabling them to book that meeting whilst they're still in that task orientated mindset. And the results really just speak for themselves. So the MQL to meeting booked conversion rate here was 77%. So 77% of buyers that inquired went on to book a meeting with sales. So that's the first one, no meeting embed on the website, 42% conversion rate. Next one with in 2024 with a meeting embed, 77%. So that's a 35% increase in high intent lead to meeting booked conversion rate simply by putting the calendar embed on the form. Now, if you're already generating a high number of inquiries or demo requests, whatever it may be, through your website, but you don't have this in place, it's just a no-brainer for me, really, just to accelerate that process and get as much pipeline out of those inquiries you're already getting as possible. So I'll definitely have a look into it, have a look at the software and the solutions available. It's a huge opportunity for businesses right now to make the most of what they're getting and really just optimize and make their entire demand gen funnel more efficient. When it comes to measuring how many high intent website conversions go on to actually enter your pipeline, again, should be fairly easy, especially if you've got good software in place like a CRM, where you can actually flow in your website inquiries and attach deals to them and opportunities and things like that. So just looking at how many inquiries and high intent conversions you're getting, how many of those actually have a opportunity or deal attached to them, will essentially tell you how effective your website is being at converting those good fit high intent leads into pipeline. The other thing you might want to look at here is, just because we spoke about the meeting scheduler tool, actually putting out meeting booked or contacted or whatever it may be as a status or a stage to basically say somebody has submitted a high intent form on our website. How many of them have actually gone on to book a meeting? If you already have that data, fantastic, because you can compare what impact you're currently having and what impact, implementing a meeting scheduler, for example, will have. But yeah, two things you can look at there in terms of measurement. Okay, so moving another stage down the funnel now, and this is the website visitor to high intent conversion rate. So we just spoke about you've got those high intent conversions. How do you get them into pipeline? Now, how do you get more high intent conversions from your current website traffic? This is kind of in the realm of pure marketing impact, really, here, and specifically the website. How do you get more of those visitors to convert? Now, obviously there's a lot of things that go into making an effective website, and I'll definitely, small plug here for our other podcast, Websites Decoded, where Phil, our co-founder, who's usually on this pod with me, basically dives into every aspect of B2B websites and what you can do to create a website that truly captures demand and enables you to convert demand better. So definitely go and head over there for real tactical insights on what you can do to make a better website. But really, just to cover some things here that you can look for in order to make the most of your current website traffic and convert more of those into high intent leads. So, first things first, when a buyer lands on your website, do they immediately understand what you do and how it helps them? So, look at your messaging, make sure it resonates with the first time visitor, and that they understand what you do and can continue to go on and educate themselves on your offering. Next, obviously, look at the user experience. Make sure it's intuitive, that buyers understand how to use your website, how to navigate, where to go to find the next information that's logical on their journey. And of course, make decisions on behalf of your buyer. Understand the information that they will need based on their current position on the page or on the website, and then make sure that content is accessible in the best way possible. So obviously, when it comes to accessible content, that means not gating it, which we've spoken about lots on Demand Decoded, and the negative impacts that this can have on, buyer experiences and just your ability to generate demand. So make sure that's ungated and key content is more than accessible to your buyers, that they don't even have to think about where to find it, that it's just there on your website. It's instinctive. They know exactly what to look for, where to look for it. The other quick thing to look at is to use those specific and action orientated CTAs. So you could drop things like contact us or let's go, get started, things like that, that kind of mean nothing, and actually use specific action orientated CTAs that encourage buyers to click and give them trust in what they're going to receive on the other end. So things like book a demo, very clear that they're going to get a demo. Talk to sales, very clear that they're going to talk to sales. Start free trial. It's clear that they are going to be doing those things, and it gives them more faith in actually going to that page, even if that is the first step. And then you've actually got the page, that conversion page, which is arguably one of the most important things here when you're trying to convert more website visitors. So really optimizing that bottom of funnel page will give you a big leg up in improving this conversion rate. So first thing to look at there is the language that you're using. Does it reflect that CTA? For example, if you say book a demo, actually offer them a demo on the page. Don't say talk to sales, because people will just drop off straight away because they're not getting what they expected. Make sure you identify the next steps. Use a logical but not too large form. Feel free to add a couple of extra fields in there if you think they are necessary for you, because let's face it, serious buyers will still submit the form. Social proof can also help here. So include things like any badges that you've got from G2, for example, number of reviews, any other accreditations or things that might just help buyers get over the line once they're on this page. Now, again, I'll just say, if you did want any more recommendations or tactics to improve the conversion rate of website visitors into high intent website conversions, go and check out Websites Decoded, because there is so much good information in that podcast about how to do exactly that. When it comes to measuring, almost your website conversion rate, this is something marketers often can get wrong or get sidetracked with looking at the wrong thing. So a lot of marketers will look at, okay, how much website traffic am I getting and how many of those are converting into leads and contacts. But it's really important to strip out any of the low quality, low intent leads here and just look at purely how much website traffic am I getting? How many website visitors am I getting? And how many convert into high intent leads? Those leads that go on to convert into pipeline and revenue at a much higher rate, because essentially they are the leads that you want to be getting. If you get more of those, in theory, if they're converting into pipeline and revenue at a high rate, you'll be getting more of those things further down the funnel. Okay, so let's move on to the next stage, and I suppose further up the funnel, and talk about that unknown audience to website visitors phase. So essentially, how do you get more of your ICP, your audience, onto your website? And that might be an audience that already knows you or an audience that you're trying to capture. Essentially, how do you get more of those people that already know you and potentially understand your offering or not onto your website? Now, this kind of splits into two different sections because you've got demand that you've already created and influenced, and demand that you're just capturing because somebody else or something else has created the demand. Now, let's tackle the first one. So, if you've already created the demand for a problem, for a solution, when the buying trigger occurs, website visits will happen because you've already built up trust and affinity at the kind of unknown stage. So, let's put this into perspective and give you an example. If a company is educating their market on a potential problem that they might be facing that they might not know about, then you'll have built up a lot of trust and affinity with that person if you're the one who's educated them on what the problem is and how they could potentially solve it. For example, if a business is educating their market on a potential problem that they may not know about and how to actually solve that problem, a lot of trust is created by doing that. The buyer kind of almost associates that company with that particular problem so that if and when a buying trigger occurs to solve that problem, whatever it may be, whatever might happen to say, oh, we've got that problem there, we really need to go and fix that now. The first person that they're going to be turning to is the person that educated or the company that educated them on how to solve that problem and what it is in the first place. And obviously, if your offering and your solution solves that problem, they're going to be coming to you first. So a lot of this comes back to the educational marketing you do and the trust that you build with your audience before they're even in market to buy in the first place. I'm sure you've probably heard of the 95% and 5% split when it comes to B2B marketing. The fact that 95% of your market are not in market to buy right now. The buying trigger hasn't occurred, it hasn't happened. So if you're marketing to them, building trust and building affinity with them, when that buying trigger does occur and they move into that 5%, here is where they will go to you. They will choose you. You'll at least be in the running because they associate your business with that problem and with that solution. If the demand has already been created elsewhere and you're now focusing on the 5% of your market that is currently looking for a solution, then you can still capture this unknown audience, this audience that you're not aware of within search through SEO and PPC, through review sites and things like that, and then bring them onto your website. And it's important to consider both low intent and high intent traffic here. Are buyers, for example, just searching for long tail queries about how to solve a particular problem? Could you then, answer the question of how to solve that problem? Or are they actually searching for high intent commercial queries? Basically, I want this product or solution right now. It's important to capture both of those potential cohorts of traffic, even though one may convert at a higher rate, because they're both in market, they're both your audience. So it's important to get both associated with your brand. So, are your products and service pages optimized for commercial keywords that buyers use when looking for a solution? So many times I've seen products and service pages, key pages on the website that have H1s and title tags that just aren't using keywords and phrases and terms that your buyers are using. They're just product names that are kind of made up and whatnot. And, if you're Salesforce, if you're Adobe, that kind of thing is fine because you've got the brand recognition behind you that, your product or service name will probably become the recognized thing anyway that everybody starts using. But for most businesses, using language that your buyers use will help them find you even better and bring more website traffic, essentially. And then you've got the content creation piece, which is essentially creating content optimized for search that helps buyers solve problems. It kind of goes back to Marcus Sheridan's, his book, They Ask, You Answer. Essentially, does the informational content you're creating answer a question, or are you just creating it for your own internal use or biases that there may be? Make sure that the content that you're actually creating is bringing in an audience and helping them to solve problems. And then you're creating a cluster effect to internally link those back to the solutions pages to improve their position in search and give those the link equity and credit. And obviously, you can supplement all of this with PPC if you want to, if that opportunity is there for you, if you've identified good volumes, potentially low cost per click. It kind of comes down to each and every business when it comes to PPC. But for sure, you can capture in-market buyers through search that way. I did briefly touch on review sites, but obviously, if buyers are using things like G2, Capterra, Gartner, even when it comes to evaluating and researching potential solutions, then you want to be in those places too. So many times I've seen real high intent commercial keywords absolutely dominated by these review sites like the ones that I've just mentioned. And it's really, really hard to outrank these guys because they've got huge domain authorities, huge volumes of traffic, just huge credit in search, basically, that going up against these and trying to outrank them is incredibly hard. A lot of the time it's much easier just to get behind them and actually make use of this channel to capture those in-market buyers that are using those channels to research and evaluate. Another way to attract an unknown audience is to utilize events. If your audience attends events that have sponsorship opportunities, it may be worthwhile sponsoring those events to get in front of your audience. Obviously, not every industry, not every vertical will use search, will use social, will use these things. Some are still, driven by events. And if your audience goes to these events and uses those events, it's important to be there and be in front of those, because ultimately then that's how more of these people will get onto your website and into your pipeline at the end thing. Absolutely, I am not an event expert, but I recognize it as a key way to attract an audience, an unknown audience that have probably never heard of you before, and essentially go to the right place, go where your audience is. And, little plug, we are really excited to be at Inbound this year. So I will be dabbling in event marketing, kind of already have. Yeah, it's exciting. But events is another way. So I will leave that at that. So moving back to the final stage, and that's building an unknown audience. And I'm not going to spend too much time here because building an audience is a huge topic, but there's one fundamental part of it that needs to be taken into account in any business, in any kind of marketing situation. And that is just fundamentally understanding what your audience want. I could sit here and talk about a million different ways to build an unknown audience, but essentially it's going to vary depending on business and depending on exactly who you're targeting and what you're selling. So the best thing you can do here is just go away and understand, not actually go away, please stick around the podcast, but essentially understand what the audience wants. So, building that unknown audience that eventually go on, to progress further down all the stages starts with just having a deep understanding of their preferred channels, their content formats, their consumption habits, where they go to research, evaluate, all of these things. Just fundamentally understanding your audience better than anybody else will help you identify content to create, channels to go after, events to go to, all of these things that are essential for building an unknown audience. Start with first understanding them deeply. So let's wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Demand Decoded and enjoyed the solo episode. This has been different, exciting. I've got some edits to make, obviously, which you'll probably have found funny if I left them in, but I probably won't. But yeah, let me know if you want more of these solo episodes. And it's worth saying, if you are interested in anything that I've spoken about and this approach to inbound demand generation, I'm, more than happy to chat about this in more detail on LinkedIn. Just hit me up, Dan Stilgo, on LinkedIn. Or if you're interested in, what we're doing at Blend to help businesses with this inbound demand generation approach, then visit blendb2b.com to see what we do and to get in touch with us if you want to. But until then, I'll see you on the next episode of Demand Decoded. Thanks for listening and catch you later.